I always feel like you're all like I want to cry when I come up here. I'm not sure why, but anyway, I have a little bear story that's so good. And incidentally, you're good. Okay. You two back there. Thank you so much for what you do here. Anyway, I have a little bear story that I'd like to share with you today. Eleanor shared it at our Bible study, and I was just so impressed. She said, I really love to go camping, and I always took low-fat food. And she said, because I didn't want to be tempted with my companions' high-fat food. And so, well, she said it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and she heard crashing and banging, and she went and peeked out of the flap of her tent. She said, oh, there's a bear out there, and he's just throwing food around. So in the morning, she discovered what happened. The bear had eaten all the high-fat food, and he had thrown with wild abandon all over the camp her food. So Eleanor's wise, and she knew the bear knew better. And so she got on high-fat food, and it's more fun, right, Eleanor? More fun. Yeah. So I'm going to share a true story with you today. It all began in August of 1854, and it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and a little boy was born in a log cabin in an Indian reservation, on an Indian reservation, in a little town. Actually, it was 4 miles from the town of St. Cloud, Minnesota. The father of the boy was a trader with the Chippewa natives on the reservation, and his wife Mary. They were 18, she was 18 when they got married, and she was a woman with so much courage and such a strong spirit. Hunters and trappers came and went, roving. Bands of Chippewa and Sioux natives passed by. And Mary, the mother of the little boy, felt sometimes paralyzing fear as because she was 4 miles from town, and the French settlers and the natives all seemed so savage at times. There was fighting amongst them, and the French settlers didn't speak English and were drunk some of the time. So one day when her little boy was 2 years old, Mary was in the cabin alone, and a band of painted Sioux rushed up to her home. And the leader, he was a towering medicine man, and he was all decked out and painted. And he tore into her cabin and grabbed the little boy out of her arms and left. And he rode away with Mary screaming. And she spent the day, of course, in prayer and anxiety, and then faith would come over her, and then she'd say, oh God, don't let them hurt my little boy. Don't let them hurt my little boy. And then she would pray, but then terror would come over her again, and she'd feel the presence of God. It was late in the evening when that same medicine man returned the little boy. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't crying. He seemed just fine. And that little boy that was returned was Charles Sherlock Fillmore. Do you all know that story?
No.
Okay. Well, you should have. We're all here today because of this great man. So Charles had a brother, Norton, and they both wandered in and out of Indian lodges and teepees as freely as did the Indian children as they were growing up. And when Charles was 7, his father left his mother alone and moved 10 miles down the road. But his mother pressed forward through poverty, inharmony, and all the other obstacles that faced her. The wives of the French traders, though, were very hospitable And she managed to eke out a living by being a dressmaker for them. So after 5 years of this struggle, Norton, the brother, walked out and he was not to return. That was it. They would hear from him once in a while, but he was through with that lifestyle. Charles did not have much formal education. Actually, he only had 3 months a year in the winter. And he was far from a church and didn't have that. And then Charles met with a dreadful accident. Many of you have heard of that, haven't you? Okay. And that was a determining factor in his life. He fell while ice skating and his hip was dislocated. His leg grew steadily worse. Many doctors all over had a different diagnosis for him. Now, Charles Fillmore lived with pain. He said, I was leeched, I was cupped, I was bled, I was lanced, I was seasoned, I was blistered and roweled. He said, each doctor would say, we don't know how you managed to live from the quack that last treated you. He said, it was a miracle to me how I ever lived and got away from all those doctors. But they left me with a bundle of bones and sinews. And I found in my possession after they'd all done their experiments. He said, my hip socket had been destroyed and my leg had stopped growing. It was always, he said, I was always in a titanic struggle with pain, but I never gave up. I was left with a withered leg, but my spirit was not withered. And he said, I knew that I could never, ever give up. As a child, someone made Charles some crutches and he was able to hop around the house and help his mom. The spirit of Mary, his mother, imparted to him hope, faith, and encouragement, and a powerful knowing that Charles had a destiny that would be out of this world. It would be out of the world that she'd known, be out of the world of betrayal, poverty, lack. The way she loved, the way she lived and loved him put a fire of strength, of knowing within her. So here was an alert, vital, self-reliant, enterprising spirit in Charles. And yet that spirit was lodged in a body incapable of any physical exercise. Most of the boys that he knew at school, of course, were, but not him. Then something so extraordinary happened, so wonderful. An Army officer moved in to St. Cloud, and his wife, Carolyn, had gone through college, which was a rare attainment, actually, for a woman during that period of time. So they had a son the same age as Charles, but he wasn't the least bit, and she was going to homeschool, and he was not the least bit interested in the subjects that would be covered, which was classical literature. But Charles, being his friend, was around him, and he couldn't get enough. And so she decided to take him on as a student. And she gave Charles the opportunity of making the acquaintance with Shakespeare and Tennyson and Emerson, and Walt Whitman, Mark Twain, Henry David Thoreau, and many others. Oh, how he loved these exalted ideas of these great thinkers. She taught him the rules of grammar and gave him writing exercises. His mind was way ahead of his age, and he wrote well and he understood the thoughts of these great thinkers. He stayed with his teacher for several years, and at the age of 19, he left St. Cloud, Minnesota, and he just started traveling in different areas. And he finally ended up in Denison, Texas, and there he met a beautiful redhead. So here comes Myrtle. Anyway, she had opened up a private school and often opened her school to poets and authors. And she had a literary night once a week. And there was Charles, and she was reading a poem. Doesn't get better than that. Anyway, and a voice within Charles said, this is going to be your wife. So Myrtle and Charles, they loved the same things. They loved scientific discoveries. They loved philosophy, and they had a natural affinity for God. Well, Charles got a job as in real estate and as an assayer, and also mining. He was interested in all those things. And it was very, very good time for real estate. So in 1881, March 29th, Charles was doing well, and he asked Myrtle to marry him. And they headed off for Pueblo, Colorado, where they prospered in real estate, and they had two sons. One was Lowell Page, and the other one was Waldo Rickard. And so Charles spent, both of them would spend day and night, sometimes every evening they would be reading these great spiritual authors, because he had all these beloved books by this time. He was born to yearn for God, to know God with all of his heart. He knew he had to find God within himself. Have any of you ever felt like that? Man, I've gone out here, I've got to find him in here. So anyway, as a young man, Charles and his friend, though, he always had the spiritual bent. And so now I'm going to share with you some of the early roots that maybe we came from. He and his friend would get together, and they were intensely interested in Spiritism. And they both felt that they could be mediums, maybe great mediums. So they'd sit together every night, facing each other, their fingers against the tabletop to see if they could mysteriously raise it in the air. And he later repudiated Spiritism, but not until he had explored it thoroughly. Charles studied and grew to have great knowledge of Buddhism, Brahmanism, Theosophy with Madame Blavatsky and Rosicrucians. And he also knew many denominations, and he seemed to just have a bent to know these things. So then Myrtle met Emma Curtis Hopkins. Have you all heard of her? She was the teacher of teachers for so many of the spiritual leaders of the New Thought movement. They became very close to her, very good friends. And she said to them one day, "You two are going to be great healers." She said, "I see that." Meanwhile, Charles and Myrtle and their two children moved to Kansas City, Missouri, where he had another son, Royal. Royal was born in 1889. And they would help thousands of people here to awaken to their identity in Christ and to actually start living in the kingdom of heaven. Charles and Myrtle were able to buy land and buildings with his real estate endeavors. They both, because of their love for philosophy and science and all things spiritual, they decided to start a magazine called Modern Thought. In the beginning, Myrtle and Charles worked learning the printing business, and that would not be so easy. They did typesetting. It was like really a hard job to do books. In the first issues, their magazine was full of articles by occultists and theosophists, psychics and spiritualists, and some Hindus. Charles was bothered, though, after a while. He was bothered by this. And he said, he published the magazine and he knew it had no foundation for healing, and that's what he'd come for. More than anything, he realized he had to give people healing principles. That was his purpose in life. So his magazines to him might have been entertaining. He thought they're probably entertaining, but they don't have the healing principles in them. So his next publication, he announced, "We will no longer be permitting articles on Spiritism or occultism." In his meditation, he now knew that the power was not in isms or cults. Even though they had at one time influenced him, he did not want to embrace them any longer. He felt he was now following the will of God. And when he wrote these pages in the magazine, he said, "The magazine is now open to teachers and healers who are into pure healing This does not include magnetism, hypnotism, mesmerism, psychometry, or psychic phenomena, astrology, or palmistry. We do not condemn any system. We discovered the greatest power is the Holy Spirit power taught and demonstrated by Jesus Christ in the scriptures of the Bible. Did you all know that? So anyway, here he was. He was like an evangelist. So it was then that the Fillmores soared in their knowledge and teaching, and later their magazine Unity came out, and then the Daily Word. But Charles Fillmore writes, you know, we can never get into the kingdom of heaven of God through artificial methods such as mesmerism and hypnotism or mediumship, channeling, or any other shortcut to spirituality. He said, the I am within us can never be coerced or robbed its perfect freedom. When we have decided to return to the Father's house within us, it is an easy road. Oh yes, it may be kind of hard in the beginning because we've got all so much baggage. We've got all kinds of negative concepts and belief systems, but then it grows easier as we head in that direction. God heads towards us. We have been given a helper, and he talked a lot about this. The helper is the Spirit of truth. The Spirit of truth will guide you into all things. It will guide you into all truth. And then he said, if you seek honestly, you can enter in, seek, and you're going to find, knock, and that door will be open to you. Much later, Charles and Myrtle opened up a metaphysical Bible school using some of the buildings that they had bought. They had Sunday classes, and I thought this was so interesting. Their classes started at 3:00 in the afternoon, so people would not miss their church services. He did not want them to leave their church. Eventually, the word traveled, and hundreds and thousands of people actually ended up pouring into the school. These people were not the Buddhists or the Theosophists or the Rosicrucians. These students were Methodists and Catholics and Baptists and Episcopalians, and even those from the Congregational Church, and then priests started coming and ministers from all these churches, and they would take that healing message back to their church and teach it, which is what he wanted them to do. He wanted to strengthen their souls and take it back to their own church. That was the purpose of the school, and it was a consensus among church leaders and their congregants that the school was giving everyone spirit-filled information. It was helping people to be healed. And the scriptures and Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit being taught really and truly strengthened the churches and helped with the healing that a lot of the people needed. So it was interesting because a lot of these people went to the church, but by the time they came back at 3:00 in the afternoon for this service, he said they were all abuzz. They couldn't wait. They were filled with anticipation. But a lot of times you leave church, you want to go home and eat and sleep. So Charles Fillmore had one thing in his heart, and that was to light a fire in the souls of those who came to him. Yes, his life had one purpose, the unfoldment of his own spiritual qualities so that he might help others to find and unfold the spirit that was within them. He sought to have teachings that would heal, and he knew it was right for people to have an alert mind, to have a healthy body and prosperity in all areas of their life. He felt that abundance in all our affairs was living the spiritual life. And he would say, come on, let's believe what Jesus believed. He said, I come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. That includes every area of your life. A great gift that the Fillmores had was to see the past, the defects or shortcomings in people, but they always saw the spiritual potentialities. They saw the Spirit of Christ. They saw the Spirit of Christ in each person. And they could instill in people's faith their very own abilities. One woman said they had the gift to see with love's eyes, to see and love a heart, to feel the unspoken need. They always knew that unspoken need and the hidden talents of another. People were so excited by the School of Healing, and so many people came from all over the world for it, that Charles and Myrtle felt that they needed a cafeteria to feed everybody. So it was soon feeding 600 to 1,500 people a day. All plant-based vegetarian food. They were vegetarians, and I'm sure that wherever he had an opportunity, he would convince people they should be. And so one of the things Charles loved to do was to go down to the cafeteria and laugh and just be joyful down there and share truths with people. The Unity magazine was printed in 12, that was the magazine that came out. It was printed in 12 languages and was sent to millions of people all over the world each month. Charles said, we're teaching people the new Christianity, where healing principles are imparted. They will touch hundreds as they take these principles back to the churches. Scores of radio stations around the world picked up their weekly messages of healing. 3 million people weekly. Soon, there were 600 workers working in the print building alone. Did you guys know all this?
No.
Wow, so good. So anyway, and you get me again next week to tell you more. I'll tell you about the other woman. Okay, so they also published a magazine for children called We Wisdom. And Myrtle was the editor of that for 30 years. 400,000 of those went out every month. The cafeteria and We Wisdom are no longer in operation at Unity headquarters. At one point, Charles was invited to speak at the Shrine Auditorium in LA. And he actually had never really left the Kansas church or the school. And so he decided to go. And he was amazed. 7,000 people showed up and another 1,000 that couldn't get in. So there's just no more room. These people had been getting the publications and they came because many had experienced healing. Charles preached, anyone can come into the Holy of Holies of the Bible. We can penetrate the mysteries of the sacred scriptures. The Bible teaches us that the Spirit of truth is with you to teach you all things and to disclose to you the deep truths of God that are in the scriptures. The truth you know can make your world conform to your truth. Is that good? Mm-hmm. It's really good. I'll do it again. The truth you know can make your world conform to your truth.
Yes.
You could even write it down. Anyway, during a time of an epidemic of the flu, he said, cease making disease microbes and turn your attention to the things of God. Make love alive in you by the thinking and being love. Make wisdom the light of the work by affirming God's omnipresent intelligence. See in your mind the pure substance of God. This is the way to destroy microbes. That is the antidote for disease germs. In 1928, they advertised in their magazine that classes now would be taught at the Unity Training School for students from all over the world and every state in the Union. So the third term, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what they were teaching in that school. So from August the 1st to August the 26th, offers courses in spiritual healing, natural prayer, Bible interpretation, Bible history, spiritual development, creative thinking, and lessons in truth. Pretty incredible. I brought 2 books today from 1931 and 1938, and all the time I've ever been at Unity, I usually just give you material from 1938. I haven't come to the point of catching up here with Unity. So that's, anyway, they also shared in the same magazine from 1938 that the Society of Silent Unity, founded 35 years before, at this time, they said we have 90 prayer workers praying around the clock for you all the time. Now, 10 pages in the publication, there's 86 pages in these magazines, and 10 pages in the publication are on metaphysical understanding of the Bible lessons, and 5 pages for Unity teachers that are listed from all over the United States, including England and Scotland. And the rest of the 89 pages of the magazine were testimonies of healing, and they were so good. So Silent Unity, I just read everyone. I've read them over and over. Silent Unity received thousands of letters a month asking for prayer, and thank you, Silent Unity, for their answered prayers. The magazine has many of these testimonies, so I'm going to read to you one of these letters. It's so good. A young man contacted Silent Unity for prayer that he would be taken from the riotous life that he was living and to be kept away from it once he ceased to care for it. Well, the next letter from Silent Unity received, and they've been praying, of course, for him. And he said, thank you for your prayers. They were very powerful. I'm now in prison under a sentence of 6 to 15 years. He said, I have never been so happy in my life. I have been sent the weekly Unity magazine and Lessons in Truth. And because of these publications, I have to tell you that I'm happier in prison than I've ever been in my life. They later received another letter saying my sentence has been cut to 2 years. Unity also had a home study Bible course, and thousands graduated from that course with more dominion, truth, and faith. I remember a friend experiencing a major healing when she read in Charles Fillmore's Guide to Healing. Have any of you ever read that book? Oh, mercy. Okay. It says, God is eternal and everlasting in spirit. We are already healed. So time past is a misconception. This is really deep. So good. God's intelligence and divine blueprint is in every cell of our bodies, and our cells are responsive to our knowing of truth and knowing that we're one with God. Remember, God only sees us in our perfection. Charles said, do not burden your body with fears and worries, thinking about your aches and pains. Think about God that made you absolutely perfect, and every cell will hear it and respond. Now, some well-known people who've been affiliated with Unity are Della Reese, Betty White, Wally Amos, Lucy Arnaz, Dr. Maya Angelou, Patricia Neal, Jack Cornfield, and Michael Gott, Jim Gaither, Eric Butterworth, of course, Adele Banks. Betty White said, I have to tell you something. She said, I am sexier and wiser because of Unity. So they experienced extraordinary miracles, which you're going to hear next time. I hope you'll come back next week, and you're going to hear about the miracles that happened in their life, and you are going to have some of the principles that they taught back then. The healing opened the door to thousands to know the secret of their healing principles, so we want to cover some of that. And I also want to tell you that I'm going to be having a very exciting Bible study on the book of Luke. And it's going to be on the 12th right here at 1 o'clock. And some of you have been in the Bible study, the book of John. Did you enjoy it?
Yes.
Okay. That means you're going to enjoy the book of Luke. It's really good, filled with mystery, filled with treasures. And we believe that we are in a time right now where every single one of us actually have the ability to be healing. And that's what we're going to be touching on. These thousands of people that ended up in their school, ended up many times being healers. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the Bible study. And anyway, let's just have a little meditation, okay? Oh, you guys were so wonderful. So was that a different thing than you really thought? I'm just interested.
Yeah.
Or did you think unity was kind of starting from that kind of viewpoint?
No.
No, I know, it's surprising. So anyway, let's just have a few moments of silence right now. I've come that you might have life and that you have it more abundantly in every area of your life. If there's any area of your life where you don't feel as abundant, just move away from it right now and move into that precious place of God's love and abundance for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.